The Embroidered Shawl. Sean had asked Eileen one day, "Hey, you've just arrived in the States. Do you want to go to Times Square on New Year's Eve with us?" Eileen had heard about the celebration at Times Square before she came to America. "But I have already promised someone that I will eat the New Year's dinner with her." "You can have your dinner and join us later. One of us can pick you up," Sean said. The next day, Eileen talked to her co-worker Rose about Sean's and his friends wanting her to go to New York Times Square with them. "Then you aren't coming to dinner?" Rose sounded disappointed. No, I'll still have dinner at your place. I'll go with them afterward." Rose then relaxed. That year, Eileen had arrived in the States around November and was waiting for the spring term to start. She met Sean, Xingxian, Xiaoyu, and Nina. They were also overseas Chinese students. During the day, they worked hard to earn money, and they went to graduate school at night. Whenever they had spare time, they would attend concerts or go to the operas or museums. Sean was the most experienced. He told Eileen that since she had no problem communicating in English, she could find a temporary job and earn some spending money during the holidays. So Eileen went to an employment agency on 42nd Street. A kind and efficient-looking employment agent took out a deck of 3x5 cards, each with a word on it. She asked Eileen to file them into an accordion file in alphabetical order. Eileen was a foreign language major in college back in Taiwan, and her English dictionary had been thumbed through 1,000 times, so she filed the cards away. The agent picked up the phone and started dialing. Eileen heard her say, "This one will have no problem. I'll send her right now." She told Eileen how to get to an office on 57th Street and assured her that the job would be very easy. Eileen started working as a filing clerk the same day in a mail-order department of a very expensive department store. Her boss took her to see Rose and said Eileen would work with her as a team. Rose looked to be in her early 60s. Her honey-colored hair was sparse. She was heavily made up, and she wore a dress in bold red and green prints as if Christmas was already here. Eileen could sense her uneasiness about a person joining her, so Eileen told her that she was just there to have some working experience and would go to school right after the winter holidays. Rose relaxed and showed Eileen how to file the mail order forms and gave her half of what she had in her hand. Then Rose said she wanted to go to the restroom. After she left, Eileen did her stack in a few minutes. Rose didn't come back, so she did Rose's, which she had left on her stool. When Rose finally returned, she had the smell of lingering cigarette smoke all over her. Eileen told her that she had already filed away everything. "You're such an angel," Rose said. That was the very first job in Eileen's life, and she felt very proud. She thought that she would do the job even better by filing even faster. Although it was tedious work, Eileen competed with herself for speed. Gradually, other girls in the big filing room would give her their work to do sometimes, and she was happy that she could help. She found those temporary workers were only interested in getting discounts to buy things which ordinarily they could not afford at the store. Whenever they got the chance, they would go to the restroom to smoke, chew gum, and compare what they had bought. Eileen was surprised that the material goods could bring them such joy. Eileen heard that after the holiday season, most of the temporary workers would be laid off. Although it was still the golden age of employment in the States, New York was going into a mini-recession. Rose asked Eileen if she would like to have Christmas dinner with her, since she had just arrived in the States. Eileen told her she had already been invited somewhere else. "How about New Year's Eve? Can you come on New Year's Eve and have dinner with me?" Eileen thought it was still more than 2 weeks away, so she said yes. On Christmas Eve, downstairs in the store, people went crazy buying Christmas gifts at the last minute. The mail-order department was quiet. They all got their checks and a small box of Swiss chocolate. Many of the employees also got a notice of termination of employment. Eileen found this out from a girl who was sobbing by the filing cabinets. Rose was nowhere to be found. After a long time she showed up. Her face was pale. She sat on the stool for a long time. Then with her lips trembling, she told Eileen that this was the last day she would work for that store. Eileen was astonished. If anyone should be laid off, it should be her. She had told the office that she was going to school in the spring. Rose finally said, "Maybe it's just as well. I didn't quit. At least I'll get my severance pay." She asked Eileen whether she still wanted to come to dinner. "Of course," Eileen said. She was afraid to see Rose's eyes, afraid that Rose was going to cry. When Eileen went back to her apartment, she called everyone she knew and told them how shocking it was that Rose had been laid off instead of her. Sean said that America was a capitalistic country. Everything was based on free competition. When they want you, they'll pat you on the shoulder, and if they are through with you, they will just say goodbye. People were used to this practice. On New Year's Eve, the office closed early. Eileen went home and took out the souvenirs she had brought from Taiwan and was trying to decide what to bring Rose as a New Year's gift. Then Sean called. He said he would just work at one job that day. After work, he would pick Nina up and go to Times Square. Xingxian and Xiaoyou would pick Eileen up at Rose's place that evening. She opened the trunk and looked at the slippers, brooches, and various gifts she had brought with her from home, and still didn't know which one to give Rose. All of a sudden, she took from the bottom of the trunk the embroidered shawl, which her mother had specially purchased for her. It was of deep rose satin, hand-embroidered with roses and camellias. Her mother had said she had gone all over town and found one of its kind. Eileen wrapped it and put it in a box. Rose lived in an old but neatly kept walk-up apartment building. Eileen climbed to the third floor. She had already opened the door and was waiting for Eileen. She had a colorful dress on and her face was made up. The room smelled of cigarette smoke and artificial freshener. Old-fashioned furniture filled the place. Near the inn table there was a 5-foot Christmas tree full of ornaments and a single strand of lights blinking on it. Eileen handed the box to Rose and said, "It's for you, Rose." Rose opened it and exclaimed, "It's too beautiful, too beautiful." Eileen asked her to spread the shawl. "I can't take such an expensive gift," she said. Eileen put the shawl over Rose's slightly hunched shoulders and saw that her eyes were filled with tears. Rose wiped her eyes dry and touched the embroidered flowers one by one. She asked Eileen to sit down on the sofa, and she took down each of the ornaments and showed them to Eileen. One was given to her by her mother when she was 6 years old. One was bought on her European trip. Many were the ones she had bought over the years of working at the expensive department store. Her rouged cheeks and penciled eyes looked as happy as that of a child. Rose's dining room was full of old silver that was to be her wedding silver, but she hadn't married. She showed Eileen a picture in an ornate frame. In it was a young man in uniform. He was a lieutenant in the Air Force who was killed in Normandy during the Second World War. The first course was baked grapefruit garnished with a sprig of mint. Rose said in the part of the States where they lived during the winter, the grapefruit came from Florida. It was a special treat. She poured Eileen a glass of apple cider because Eileen was allergic to alcohol, and she poured herself a glass of amber-colored wine. Rose served French onion soup that was also a tradition at her home. Then she served salad with cherry tomatoes, green cucumber, purple lettuce, and crispy iceberg lettuce in transparent vinegar sauce. The main dish was Salisbury steak with peas and carrots. She said she had wanted to treat Eileen to a steak, but since she had gotten laid off, she could only serve chopped steak. For dessert, she would give Eileen a surprise. Rose said that since Eileen had just arrived in New York, she must taste it. She had so many things to share with Eileen, but Eileen had to go to Times Square in a little while. Before the dessert was served, they heard the doorbell ring downstairs through the intercom. Rose answered. It was Xiaoyou and Xingxian. They said that they would wait downstairs for Eileen. Rose hurriedly put the dessert in front of Eileen. It was hot apple pie from Schwartz. She said she had made a special trip downtown to buy it. Eileen tasted it and it was delicious. She apologized and put on her coat. Rose helped Eileen wrap the wool scarf around her neck and said, "Don't forget to put the hat on. It's cold outside." She hugged Eileen tight and kissed her on the cheek. Her tears wet Eileen's face. "Thank you for coming to dinner." Deep wrinkles appeared under Rose's eyes as the makeup washed away by tears. The black streaks of mascara ran down her cheeks like those of a clown. "You will come again." She held Eiling's hands tight. "Yes, I will, Rose." Eiling's voice choked. Fortunately, the scarf was around her mouth. "Happy New Year, Rose." She ran down the stairs quickly. Outside on the steps, Xiaoyou and Xingxian were waiting. They only had their snow jackets on and didn't even wear hats. Their tousled black hair shone under the streetlights. They were talking and shifting their legs to keep warm. "After Times Square, we're going to a midnight movie. We bought the tickets. It took me 3 hours to get them," Xiaoyou said. His eyes twinkled. "Then we're going to Chinatown for a snack, and then to the ferry to Staten Island to walk on the beach and watch the sunrise, to start the new year right." Eiling walked between Xiaoyou and Xingxian. A few flurries fell from the sky. They started to run all the way to the subway station. When they emerged from the subway station in Times Square, it was as bright as day under the neon lights. The crowd had already gathered. Everywhere was horn tooting and laughing. Millions of balloons bumped up against one another and against the people around them. The ball that would come down and then up was at the top, blinking in the night air. They spotted at the end, behind a long line of white picket fence, Nina in her scarlet scarf and Sean. Xiaoyou, Xingxian, and Eiling pushed their way toward them.